The time is now 6 o'clock. President Hassler, the time is 6 o'clock.
We'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll start with a roll call.
Director Danziger,
Here.
Director Jex,
Here.
Director Jorgens.
Here.
Director Romer.
Here.
President Hassler.
Here. Would you now please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So public comments open for the closed session items, and we do not have any attendees, and we've not received any written public comment. We can go ahead and adjourn to closed session.
Okay, we'll
The
adjourn.
time is 6:01.
6:05. Oh, 6:05.
Digger,
Here.
Director Jex,
Here.
Director Jorgens,
Here.
Director Romer,
Here.
President Hassler.
Here.
Item 5, report of closed session action.
There's nothing to report. And then we would like to, we have some visitors here and we would like to move item 8 up to right now, if we can.
So we would like to move item 8, public comment, items not on the agenda, up on the agenda. Would you like to go ahead and come up to the podium? Oh, we're gonna just do item 8 first real quick. And then we're gonna go to the appeals. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Janice Liu. I'm the past president of the Moraga Garden Club. My name is Elizabeth Lee. I am the current president of the Moraga Garden Club. And I have been watching with interest the progression of your demonstration garden in front of Station 42. And, you know, at one point they said, oh, no, it's all settled. They're going to be fully funded. Then I saw in the newspaper that you wanted a donation from the public. And I said at the board meeting that happened just like a day or two after that newspaper article, I said, here's our chance. We want to show the citizens of Moraga what can be planted in their garden that will help, you know, with during this drought, and also that is fire safe. So anyways, we want to present this check for $2,000 to you.
Ooh, thank you. Anybody mind if I take a picture?
Yes, please. do.
Oh,
Tour of the
I'm
garden.
excited. Yeah, and Steve's also offered to share your landscaping plans with us, and that's really great.
Yeah.
Oh, you can send us a picture?
Yeah.
Here. You can stand in the middle.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's
Yes.
very generous. Thank you.
Station.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, and so since public comment is open for items not on the agenda, I'm just checking to see if we have any raised hands. And we do not have any raised hands. Oh, would you like to come up to the podium? Thank you. And if you,
Thank you.
can you please state your name? for-
My name is Ted Gamble, Gamble. And I live at 1762 Donald Drive in Moraga. The location is right at the top of Mulholland Ridge. I have lived there in the same house for 40 or 56 years. That I was 13 years old when I bought it, but no, I was 40 years old. So I will be 90 years old in December 25th this year. Congratulations. So I've seen a lot of change over the last years. I'm concerned about another house. It's at 90 Devon Drive. Devon Drive was part of the old Ream estate. It had a very large home, probably worth, 4,000 to 5,000 square feet with 4 acres. I knew the people that lived there until Dr. Segner, who owned it, died about 5 years ago. The home was sold to a developer. And the developer started to get an RVB&O. And the town of Moraga decided they didn't have the crop permit and so forth. So they redlined the home. And in the last 4 years, that house has been vacant. Absolutely nothing has happened. The 4 acres is infested with pine trees, huge oak trees, all kinds of vegetation, weeds and things like that. It's an attractive nuisance for people to come in. And in my view, it is a huge fire hazard. People could come up there and, what they're going to do when people like that are vacant, they're going to do what they do. If that caught fire, that whole hillside and a number of homes and so forth would be destroyed. I have talked to the Moraga-Orinda Fire Department. They said they're aware of it. They started when I sent a notice. Well, I went actually into the fire department, told them that I was concerned, and they looked at it and said, we are concerned also. So they had a violation, which I understand is $500 or $100 the first time. And then he started and so forth. I talked to somebody today when they were running around, and they said, well, we're now in the violation stage where they're getting assessed $500 every 2 weeks. That doesn't do any good. He said they'll put a lien on it or whatever else, but those people are gone. There's no equity. And my concern is that if there was a huge fire, it probably would affect the insurance rating for people. I've gone through the Travelers, I've gone through AAA, and I now have State Farm. And State Farm told me that Orinda and Lafayette zip codes no longer insure them. And State Farm is the only one in Moraga that I've been able to even locate them. So I think there's a lot to be concerned about. And I would hope that there was some way that you could expedite, given the huge fire hazard, to do something other than just go through and assess them time after time after time. And believe me, I'm sure there's not going to happen. They're not going to get any money from it.
And that concludes our 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Can,
Yeah.
before we go?
Yeah.
During public comment, we really can't discuss this very much, but I'm sure that the fire marshal sitting right behind you and the chief have heard you, and I think they'll be following up. Hopefully they'll follow up with you on this and let you know what's going on.
And I am just checking to see if we have any more public comment. We do not have any more public comment. So now we will resume back to our agenda, to the public hearing for the appeal on administrative citation 25-0990-001.
Okay, so
Before we begin, President Hassler, I'd like to, this is Director Mike Romer speaking right now. And I feel that I need to disclose that approximately 15 years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Zeller and Mrs. Zeller at the home of mutual friends. I spoke with both of them, but particularly I had a long conversation with Dr. Zeller. It was interesting, it was pleasant, it was respectful. We did not follow up and see each other socially after that. But when I was running for office in October of 2022, and I had a list of the voters that I was approaching, I remember coming to their house, walking up the driveway, noting that I knew them. They were not home, and I believe that I left a note. I left a flyer, and I think I put a personalized note, something to the effect of, "Hi, I'm Mike Romer. I met you, such and such." But there was no follow-up after that. I don't remember the juniper at the time, so that's not going to affect my ability to be fair and impartial on this. But I think it's important to disclose that whenever there's either the potential or the appearance of some sort of lack of impartiality, I think I can be totally impartial in judging this on the merits, and not because of any favorable or certainly not unfavorable attitude toward the Zellers, but I have discussed this with council and I've disclosed this to the rest of the board. So I'm prepared to go forward unless any reason why I shouldn't.
no, but thank you. So we're ready to proceed.
Okay. So we will move on to the staff report.
Good evening, directors. The appeal this evening is for administrative citation 25-0990-001. This is an enforcement case that began back on April 30, 2025. The initial inspection occurred in April. A follow-up inspection occurred in May with a pre-citation notification issued. June 1st, the owner submitted an extension request citing traveling outside the country. Extension request was approved until June 27th of 2025. On June 18th, the owner submitted a modification request with supporting geotechnical report. July 1st, reinspection was conducted. Violations still remain uncorrected. On July 2nd, the modifications were approved by the fire marshal. Those modifications that were requested and granted were still not, property owner was not compliant. And then an appeal was filed with the supporting geotechnical report. I think there's some, next slide, please, Marcia. As you can see, the violation in question is for the district juniper ordinance. Juniper was required to be removed within 10 feet of fire apparatus access road by January 1st, 2024. Fire apparatus access road is any road that a fire engine, ambulance, police car, emergency vehicle will drive on to get to the emergency. So fire apparatus access road includes driveways, alleyways, and other type road surfaces that are spelled out in the California Fire Code and district ordinance. Excuse me. I believe the question here is really what is being requested by the property owner. Property owner isn't requesting a modification with his geotechnical report. He's requesting an exemption from the ordinance. We don't have, I as a fire chief do not have the authority to grant exemptions of district ordinances. That wasn't something that we put in the ordinance. We can grant modifications. When the fire marshal and I talked to Dr. Zeller, we did talk about different types of modifications. One would be cut the juniper off at ground level, leaving the root system because there is concerns from Dr. Zeller about the soil stability and potential landslide. So that is a modification that we have the authority to grant. Next slide, please, Marcia. Here are just some additional photos of the juniper. Next slide. As you can see in the picture on the right-hand side, the driveway completely goes around the house. That is a code requirement due to the length of the driveway from Tahoe's Road. It's greater than 150 feet, so code requires some type of turnaround. One of the allowances is a driveway that goes completely around the property. The highlighted area is the juniper in question. As you saw from the other pictures, the juniper is, you know, a good 6-8 feet, maybe even 10 feet high in places. If that juniper catches fire, it's going to produce flame lengths 1.5 times the height of the fuel. It's on both sides of the road. With a little bit of wind, it's going to make the roadway impassable and also put enough heat onto the structure where it would likely cause the structure to catch fire. So we have two scenarios here: a wildland incident where embers blow into the juniper, catch the juniper on fire. The juniper then transitions fire into the home, or we have a structure fire that produces enough heat to catch the juniper on fire, which would then prevent the fire apparatus from gaining the proper access that we need. On the hillside, there is a hillside there. You know, we recognize that, but there is trees. We're not saying to remove the trees. There's other vegetation that are growing there. The report that Dr. Zeller presented did not speak to any specific evidence or give a soil report or say there was, you know, a previous slide or anything like that, just that, you know, it was of concern. The report also speaks to the health of the juniper. The health of the juniper is not in question. The code says any juniper within 10 feet of the roadway. It doesn't say dead juniper, healthy juniper. It just requires the juniper within 10 feet of the roadway to be removed. That's why we did, you know, move forward with the citation on this. I talked to Dr. Zeller, like I said, we granted time extension for him to do some more research on it, leaving the opportunity for him to have a hearing here in front of the board this evening. That concludes my report.
Any
Board questions for staff?
In the packet here, we had a report from Sequoia. So I would just like to ask a little about that report. So that report, I assume, was initiated by MOFD. We paid for that report, correct?
That is correct, sir. Sequoia is our environmental consultant. So I asked them to look at the report that Dr. Zeller presented to us and to write. And be very clear, Sequoia did not go out to the site. We did not have access.
Okay.
Dr. Zeller's properties behind the lock gate. So they made the report based on the photos that we gave them from our case file and from Google Earth videos or pictures.
Mhm.
And they based their findings in the report that's part of the packet on those.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been on this board now for about 7 years. I think this is, I mean, that report, I'm not sure I recall us doing that before. So I know things have changed a little in that period as far as requirements on for environmental reasons, but I think we've gone over and above to do that report to kind of compare to what the report from the geotechnical report that Dr. Zeller submitted. So I think that was a good step from MOFD, I think, to corroborate what, to support our citation. So I just got one other question. To this day, right today, juniper is still there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any further questions for staff? Hearing none, we'll move on to opening the public portion of the hearing. And so now we will go ahead and have a presentation by the appellant. Yes, thank you. And if you don't mind stating your name for the record.
My name is Dr. Scott Zeller, Z as in zebra, E-L-L-E-R. And let me know when my 10 minutes begin.
Okay, I'm going to start a timer on my phone so I can continue to show the presentation.
Actually, why don't I do it with that, because I have a lot to present and I want to make sure that I don't run out of time. So I'll start and you can start.
We can start at the same time.
Great. Can you move to the next slide,
Started,
please?
yes.
Thank
Mhm.
you. Hi, so I really appreciate the opportunity to present in front of you this evening, and thank you for this opportunity. This is a aerial view of our property. You already saw some other shots of it as well. And I will get into some of the details on why I think the property has some things that we should be looking at a little differently than just straight ahead with what has been discussed. Next slide, please. First off, there's another part of the things that we've been cited for. One is that we have a property in excess of 1 acre. And then we have to meet certain criteria for that. But if you look at the Contra Costa County tax assessor, our property is much less than 1 acre. We're only 0.94 of an acre, and I would like that part to be dropped since we are in compliance for everything for less than an acre, and a little disturbed that they keep saying that we're more than an acre. Next slide, please. So here's what's been happening to us. We've lived in Orinda for over 26 years. For the first 25, we were extremely in compliance, always doing everything expected of us well in advance of deadlines. Then last year, after the new juniper ordinance went into effect, we had an MOFD inspector come out, look at our property, and basically said, we did a few things, and they said case closed. There was no problem with the juniper hedges at that point, no request to remove them. Next slide, please. Our juniper hedges are narrow, they're hedges by any other definition, and they are something that is really there as is preventing any kind of trouble with the soil on our hillside. We've got hillsides that drop down that are pretty much like cliffs. They go down to about 100 feet to our neighbors. Nobody has ability to use our property as an evacuation route or any kind of exit. We're at the far end of a dead-end private road. We're gated. There's no way that anybody could get to us by a vehicle other than through our gates. And if they came from the surrounding properties, they'd have to drive straight up a cliff or else climb it, which is really unlikely. All parts of our juniper is surrounded by fire breaks of asphalt, concrete, stones, gravel, or dirt, and they're rarely more than even 10 feet wide. Mostly it's just like a hedge. That's actually also preventing people from falling down the cliff because they kind of parallel the edge of the cliff. And if somebody was walking along in the dark and didn't see it, they might plunge pretty dangerously. But the juniper does a really nice job of preventing that. Next slide, please. So our roller coaster continued in June of this year. We got the citation saying that all of our juniper had to go. We saw that the fuel mitigation, that if there was a risk of severe erosion, that we should make a mitigation request. Next slide. We went onto the website and we saw that there was a clause that said if we got a geotechnical report from a geologist, that should be accepted by the fire district without change. Next slide. So we went ahead and got a geotechnical report. This was done a collaboration of a geologist and a soil engineer. They said that the areas there marked in red were supporting the soil, preventing landslides, that we were in a high-risk landslide district, and that those plants should not be removed. Next slide, please. So then we got an email from MOFD that said, you can keep the juniper on those parts because of the geotechnical report, but you need to trim it by 50%. I don't know where that came from. There's nothing in the ordinance about trimming. But then we also got a fine from the day before the mitigation allowance for $100 saying that we hadn't done anything. Apparently they hadn't been talking to each other. So we ended up having to submit an appeal both to the fine and for the trimming request because of what botanists had told us. Next slide. Botanists said that you should never prune more than a quarter of the plant. It will kill the plant, and also never to prune in summer or fall. So a request to do 50% in June was really not appropriate. We also learned from the botanists that the biggest risk from juniper, I know that there's a lot of people who are very concerned about juniper, but it's really no more risky than other conifers as long as you do a really good job of getting the debris and the leaves and everything out of within the plants. And we have our plants levelly maintained by our gardeners weekly. And from what we've learned, they could be healthy and live for 700 years. Next slide, please. We then had the meeting with the fire marshal that the chief referred to, and all of a sudden, all the juniper had to go. The fire chief said that the clause about the geologist report was his predecessor's idea. He'd removed that from the website. He apologized, said that anybody who said we could keep the juniper was wrong, said instead we should cut all the juniper. Next slide. But if we remove that juniper from the hillside, if we just cut it down to the roots, those will decay and that will create tripping hazards. People could fall down the hill. It could also interfere with trying to plant any new plant. If we cut down and removed all the roots, then there could be major erosion leading to landslides. Next slide. And that's our biggest concern, potential landslides. Next slide. Don't know if you knew this, but Orinda is actually called by geologists the capital city of landslides. There's more landslides in Orinda than anywhere else in the United States over the last 100 years because of our famous Orinda soils. Next slide. There's actually a 450-page landslide report about Orinda that we researched. It's just amazing. And next slide. We have seen, since we've moved in 1999, multiple landslides in our neighborhood. In fact, just at the end of our little private drive, there was a sinkhole. All the neighbors had to get together, refill it, repave. But here's what's most remarkable, 570 Tahoes. Remember, we live at 470 Tahoes. Next slide. Here's what happened to 570 Tahoes. The entire house plummeted down the hill. Another slide, next please. Here's the underside of it. Look at how terrible that was. That's basically like where our juniper is, where those houses fell down. Next slide. And we've seen in our adjacent neighborhoods, including just 2 years ago, Cedar Lane, not that far from us, an entire house falling down the hill again. Orinda's got huge risk for landslides. Next slide. So, but our hillsides remain stable with all this. We think that the juniper has a lot to do with it. Our juniper has been there since the original property landscaping of 1959. Next slide. Juniper is very good. You read a lot of research. It's great for hillside stabilization, and it's drought resistant, meaning that, you know, with water as an issue in California, we don't have to worry about irrigation, and we've got this beautiful plant that's protecting our hillside. Next slide. Here is our property. If you look at the very top, that red line above that, that's our juniper. You can see there's our house right above that. Right below that, that's a steep cliff dropping right down into those houses. If you can imagine a landslide, mudslide dropping onto that, it would wipe those houses out. And our juniper is protecting that. That's a steep cliff of over 100 feet down right to those houses, straight from our front yard. Next slide. So you can see from the terrain map from Google, there's that big cliff dropping from our home there right down onto Bates Boulevard. Next slide. And there's a geologist's description of how the forces are trying to make landslides happen. The top of that map is Tahoe's Road, where we live. Next slide. So even the Orinda mayor 2023 said, we need to balance concerns about landslides with anything that we're worrying about. We're trying to make the community fire safe. Next slide. So this is the Contra County Tax Assessor's parcel map. This is current. This is what they have right now. The far lower left, that's our property. You will notice there is no designation of fire apparatus access roads in that official map. There's a right of way, like 2 properties over from us, but once you get to our property, there's nothing designated. Next slide, please. So here's our aerial view. And we've been working with the Pacific Legal Foundation. You may have heard of them. They're kind of the David and Goliath versus, property owners against the government. They've beaten the EPA. They're nonprofit, and they're willing to do things for free to help people when they're going up against the government, so they can make things work, and you don't have to worry about running out of money. They've got deep pockets. But we don't want to get to that. What we really like to see happen is that we have a compromise that we've come up with. And maybe my wife can present that to you. Here's what we found out. There is no designation of a fire apparatus access road, and the law says that a fire apparatus access road is a road that connects the fire department to our home. Well, we've got 2 ways you can get there, as you can see, and we don't think that you need 2. The law only says that you have a road, not any or all roads. If we designated the top road, which we call our vehicle road, it can only be accessed by vehicles and not by pedestrians. The lower road there is only our pedestrian access, and it's got pedestrian drop spots. If we designated the top road as just for our fire access road, you would have the fire access, you'd have everything you wanted, you could reach our house. Not only that, you get both levels of our house. The other side only goes to 1 level. You'd have direct access to our pool that you could use for water for the fire trucks. everything would work perfectly. You'd get what you want, and we would be able to say, this other part is not a fire department access road, but it's part of our garden. You know, if you look at the law is not about getting rid of juniper. There's plenty of houses in Orinda that have juniper still. They're just 10 feet from the main road. We agree with that. We want evacuation routes. We want fire department access. But this little road here is really just our walkway, and it's part of our garden. And plenty of people have gardens with juniper in Orinda. So why don't we just have that be our garden? That will protect that hillside, which is the really steep side that we're concerned about falling down into the neighbors. We can remove all the juniper from that top part, and we're happy to do that. Why don't we just do that? And that's our compromise that we're offering, and I've put that down on paper for you. But I think that's a compromise that fits for everybody. There's still a fire department apparatus access road, and then the other side is going to protect the hillside, and it's really just going to be part of our garden like everybody else in Orinda has. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Board questions for appellant and or staff?
We can ask the staff. So,
And can you just make your microphone?
sorry. So I think earlier I heard that the fire apparatus access was so that the fire engines can turn around and things, right? Otherwise you have to have like a T kind of a thing in your road.
We actually do have a turnaround area. If you look at the overhead view of our property, there's a big turnaround area on that, what we'd like to designate as the fire department access road.
So the turnaround is on the other side of Dr. Zeller's gate. That would not meet the code requirements as fire apparatus access. A turnaround within 150 feet where an engine has to park. So there's multiple sections of the code that have to be dealt with here. One, only I can determine what a fire apparatus access road is per California Fire Code, Title 24, Part 9. That is my authority. The turnaround for the home was required because it is greater than 150 feet. There's two sections of the code that require 150 feet. One where the fire engine's going to park. The fire hoses coming off the engine have to meet it behind the house within 150 feet. There's another part, 150 feet. If the driveway is longer than 150 feet, there has to be an improved fire apparatus turnaround there. I am not aware of any approval for the turnaround in front of Dr. Zeller's gate, meeting the code requirements for the hammerhead or the Y turnaround that is allowed in the code section.
If I could just point out that there's no thought that most of the driveways in Orinda that they have two fire apparatus access roads. We have two roads. If we hadn't built the second road, would that, I mean, it's not like we're being punished for that. I don't think anybody built the two different access roads to our parking lot with the idea that that was so that the fire trucks could turn around. It was just to make it so that there was two different ways that you could access, one by vehicle, one by pedestrian. There's tons and tons of different properties that you find in Orinda that have similar things. There's no expectation in Orinda that everybody have two driveways or that they be required to have that. I've never seen that in any ordinance or any kind of requirement of the law. We just happen to have that. I don't think we should be punished for having that. We just have a beautiful road that the fire department can access, and our other road is really for pedestrians to enjoy the gardens.
So go ahead.
So I just want one more for Dr. Zeller. So I'm not a geotechnical engineer, but my experience with slides is that the hill basically liquefies and they usually start from the bottom, not the top. In other words, the bottom starts going and the top goes with it rather than, because the top doesn't like fall over the top or anything. So if you take the roots out of the top, it might add more water to it. That would be the risk. It's water penetration that makes them liquefy and go down the hill. So it's not obvious to me that having a bunch of junipers at the top of a hill keeps the hill. It will help, but it's not obvious that would be sufficient. It might be necessary, but not sufficient. But I would, defer to a geotechnical engineer for that. But, and I think also, juniper are interesting. They are incredibly flammable. From the pictures that I saw, used to have junipers in the back of my yard. You have to literally go in and shake them dramatically and get inside of each one of them, almost weekly to get all the dead stuff out. And you'd have to trim them up to be able to get the dead stuff out underneath them. And they didn't look like they had everything trimmed out from underneath them. I couldn't see that well in the pictures, but it didn't look like that level of work had been done. And they're just a mess inside. I mean, it's half dead inside of most junipers I've seen. But why can't you cut the junipers down to the level of the ground so nobody trips on the stumps, and plant other things that aren't junipers that can grow fast, that have roots that go down, and over time, it'll probably take 15 years for the roots to rot anyway, because they usually don't just die. The more juniper pops up. And during that time, there are things certainly that grow quickly that could have alternative roots that aren't the fire hazard that a juniper is.
These are all, very reasonable points. And I think it goes back to the idea that how much of our property is owned by the fire department. I mean, we have a road that gets access, the fire department apparatus access road that goes to our residents, that we are more than willing to follow all of the requests and put into compliance. There's another side that we have experts saying it's important to keep the juniper there. And if we didn't have a second road, we wouldn't even be in this meeting right now. Basically, you're saying you have ownership of two parts of our property rather than just one. And I think that's the key point here. How much of our property do you get to say, that's ours, you need to do what we want, when technically the law says you need a road that gives you access to our property and a home, right?
And a
So is it going to be that you get to say what happens on this side and that side? And we already have a lot of people saying, no, you really need to leave that there because the root networks, everything else that goes on there, by the time you try to grow something else, there could be disaster. And I don't want to be, is the fire department prepared and the city prepared to take the liability that in case you're wrong about this and there's a cascading mudslide, landslide that destroys the homes below us, you say, oops, we were wrong? How's that going to fly? I think you're putting yourself in a situation here that's really unnecessary. We want to have a garden like we've had for 26 years. It's not hurting anybody. It's not putting any of our neighbors at risk. We're above everybody. Fire goes up, not down. So let us have that. We will meet all your other requirements. We're actually meeting the spirit of the law. And I think that that's going to be helpful for the fire department. We're not in anybody's way. Nobody's going to look at our property and say, look at those scofflaws, and nobody can even see our property. We're so far off the main road. I think it's just really important to think what makes sense on this. For us, we're willing to compromise. We've, presented this compromise offer for you. I think it's really reasonable and fair. I don't want us to have to get the Pacific Legal Foundation involved, but they've got people much smarter than me that can start fighting this. And I think that's silly. Why should we need to go this? We've got everything we need right here, meet in the middle. Let's do this compromise.
Just one more question for the chief. So is the requirement not only to have access to the house, but to have a way to turn the fire engine around? And if so, what are those requirements? And does his compromise, the whatever turnaround is at the end of his driveway, the one part of the driveway, meet that criteria? Have we been out to look and see if it could meet it?
As I said, sir, there's three different requirements here. Where a fire engine's going to park, it has to be able to meet the hose pole within 150 of the feet of the house. And there also has to be a fire department approved turnaround that is there. It is my impression from researching this case, that is why the circular driveway is there, was to meet the intent of the code of not having a turnaround, but having a circular driveway that allows fire apparatus or emergency vehicles to, make that turnaround. I would have to go and see where an engine's going to park, and if we meet the 150-foot section, I don't believe we are. That I think saying that your driveway is no longer a fire apparatus access road, that lower portion would cause other violations of the fire code.
Can I just add that there's 4 other houses on our little private road. None of them have a roundabout turnaround. All of them would be, if the fire truck went in, they would have to back out. Just like we are saying, he's saying they'd have to do with ours. I don't know why our property is the only one that would need to have this. Those are, their lines of access are much longer than 150 feet. And every single one of them would be just back in, back out. So, and I think that's the case for a lot of houses in Orinda. I think just because we happen to have this, 2 different roads that go to our parking lot, again, why are we being punished for that?
Director Hassler, this is Director Romer. I've got a couple of follow-up questions. I mean, I would just like to make a quick observation that Dr. and Mrs. Zeller have a beautiful property. It's a large property. It's a property that is it is in the interest of our fire department and our board of directors to protect you and your family primarily. I think it's a good thing that you've got to turn around and you have a wide enough access that the fire department can get up there, because from my recollection, both from the diagrams and having been there, proximity of the fire department makes a difference. They're much more likely to be able to save your home if they can get back there behind your house and not just in front of it. That's an advantage that you have over your neighbors. But the fire department's not going to be able to do that if either of those access roads, access driveways are inflamed with flames that are going up 10 feet. That precludes them from an option that can save your house. And it's not just, I think we all need to remember in this day and age that the Pacific Legal Foundation is very good at protecting individual property rights. But in this day and age, we know from having looked at the experiments that have been done by the Institute for Business and Home Safety, that if my house goes up or my neighbor's house goes up, they provide fuel for the neighborhood, and it's a cascading effect. So we're not just protecting you folks. We're not just protecting your neighbors by having high standards for your neighbors, because we know that one neighbor's house and one neighbor's juniper can start a conflagration for others. I read this report carefully, and I paid particular attention to the Sequoia Ecological Consulting in the last couple of paragraphs. I think that they pointed out that per the ordinance, these species would not need to be removed from the 10-foot slope buffer area, and they contribute to this to the stability of the soil. The tree species alone may contribute to stabilizing the slope more than the junipers do. Directly south of the juniper area within the parcel is a slope that is completely absent of junipers or shrubs or trees of any kind. It is vegetated primarily with grasses and herbaceous plants. The slope is not eroding despite the absence of juniper. Lastly, if the property owner is concerned about erosion or landslide, Sequoia would recommend the removal of the junipers down to the soil, leaving the root structure in place. After removal, the property owner can hand broadcast a fast-growing native seed mixture that can become established within a few months, thereby increasing the soil stability while also leaving the juniper roots in place. It is important to note that by leaving the roots in place, maintenance may be required to keep the juniper from growing back. This all may be kind of a pain in the neck. It's difficult to give up stuff that we have become attached to. The junipers have been there for a long time. We have an emotional connection to the stuff that's on our property. I had a bunch of junipers. I removed them 20 years ago, replaced them, made the mistake of replacing them with rosemary, which I then had to replace another 10 years. That was on a slope. Right now it doesn't have anything holding. I had the roots pulled out, but I think as Director Jorgens points out, the existing roots, if you don't pull them out, will provide some stability as a transitional thing until you can get something different that provides the same level of protection. And hopefully what you plant in substitution of that is not going to provide near the fuel that the junipers would be. So, you know, I'm really sorry that this involves a certain amount of inconvenience. It does to all of us. I mean, my wife and I are doing extensive repairs to our backyard and our front yard. That's something that I think that we're all going to have to do in the future. You know, I would regret it if we had to have the Pacific Legal Foundation dragged into this, but I'm much more concerned about the liability that we have, not only legal, but moral, if we don't have really high standards. That's one of the reasons that we have an independent agency, an independent board. And I think the Sequoia Ecological Consulting did a really thorough job here. So
If I can address what you're saying, sir, and I appreciate everything that you've said. As a physician, I've done plenty of expert witness testimony, and I can tell you that there's always an expert witness on the other side that's got a really good sounding argument, and you can kind of pick which side you want to believe.
right.
And I think that our experts said one thing and they say another. I think this again just goes back down to what if we didn't have that road there? Would this be an issue? Would we even be here right now? What if we tore that up and just made it into dirt? Would that become, then there's no paved road, you know, would there be a problem with that? Would you say like, you're not allowed to do that? Wait, this is our property. What if we just, said, look, what if that had been another plant all this time? Would there even be an issue? There's, an unnecessary decision that, I understand you want the juniper gone from Orinda, but maybe the law should have been no juniper in Orinda rather than no juniper within fire apparatus access roads. And that's what the difference is here. You're saying you can have juniper on your property as long as it's not within 10 feet of the paved edge of the juniper, the access road. Well, we're willing to do that. We're willing to comply with that, with what we think the fire department access road is. The other side is our garden. And we're no different than anyone else in Orinda who still has juniper in that regard. And that's what I think is important. And we don't have to worry about, is this roots, can we tear it down and the roots are going to hold it up, or maybe it will, or maybe it won't, or maybe there will be a problem. Why even worry about that? The other people with juniper in Orinda aren't worried about that. Again, it gets down to why, because we have two roads and there's nothing, there's a part of the law that says if it was written that way, actually on my last slide, I had it in Latin. It said if they had wanted to mean something else, they would have written it differently. So it's written as saying a fire department apparatus access road, not any or not all or not whatever we say it is. There should be a road. We have a road. We think the other side of our property is our garden, just like other people in Orinda have gardens. Why can't we maintain our garden? It will protect our neighbors below us. And then we will meet all the requirements that you have for the fire department access road on that much wider. It's only accessible to vehicles. Pedestrians can't use it. There's no touch box or anything for that side. It opens only when vehicles go down it. It accesses both levels of our property, which we have a split level. That side, you can get both sides of the house. You can get water from the pool from that side of the house. Everything is beneficial to the fire department. The other side is a narrow thing that's really best for pedestrians. Why don't we just say that's a pedestrian part? And then the other part is going to meet everything that you've needed, and it's going to go far and above everything that you need.
If I could just respond to that real, in an ideal Orinda and Moraga, I agree with you. There would be no juniper. There would also be no eucalyptus. We would revert to what was here 200 years ago, which was primarily grassland and oaks, which survive repeated natural fires and regenerate and don't create catastrophic fires. But this fire department's ordinances, like politics, is often the art of what's possible. And it's just impractical for us to outlaw every eucalyptus and every juniper and every coyote brush in the district. That's not going to happen. So we do what we can. And we try to work with people. As I understand it, this is already a modification that the fire chief and the fire marshal have worked out. It's not perfect. And the fine, if
I'm sorry, I didn't realize there was a modification. I thought we were just supposed to remove all the juniper.
am I misreading something? Maybe Chief can respond to that.
Yes, sir. There is no, the modification is they're asking to be exempted, and that is not a modification. That's an exemption.
Right. An exemption is not a modification. That's not a compromise. That's leave it as it is. And as I read.
And we aren't asking for an exemption. We're willing to take out a lot of the juniper on our property, just not the part that is going to cause a high risk of a landslide, which is clearly expressed in your ordinance and until he took it off the website in your modification plans.
All right. Maybe I need to reread what Chief wrote in here, but
No, sir. Early in the case, I'm not sure if it was the fuel mitigation manager or who had granted a modification. When it was brought to my attention after Dr. Zeller said, no, we don't agree to that modification. I removed that modification because it needed my approval. It was cutting it down to the 50%. So that was, I'm not sure who on staff, and I'm working with the fire marshal to figure that out, who said that was approved, because that would not be approved.
so there's no 50%.
There's no 50%.
It's down to the roots now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as I understand, if you don't remove the roots and there is a green part of the juniper, it will regenerate.
Yes.
So it doesn't die immediately. The roots maintain their function as a soil stabilization device, even if you've cut it down to the bare soil, as long
Yeah,
as
but
there's some
you live in
green.
Orinda like all of us. We don't want to have a landscape that looks like a moonscape with a bunch of, just dead dirt and roots and things like that. We want to have nice landscaping like anyone else. Right now, we have beautiful plants that don't require, watering, and we save all of that precious water for California. If you're going to dig it out, you're going to have to dig it all out, and we're going to have to put something else in that we're going to have to irrigate, like, oleander or something like that. It's not just cut it down to the roots and leave it. That would look like the moon.
Yeah.
And who wants that in their property?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and I think our standards of beauty are changing. Our standards of beauty are accommodating the new world that we live in, which is that there's an increasing probability of a catastrophic wildfire.
So let's move on to other people's questions.
Anyway,
and comments.
okay, I'll give up. I've said enough. You're tired of hearing me,
Appreciate your
right?
point of view.
Right.
Okay, do you have any other
I do.
comments? Question? Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Directors Romer and Jorgen said. We have about 15,000 properties, more or less, in Moraga-Orinda. 99% of them or more have complied with this. We're down to literally a handful that have not. And you said that this doesn't provide propose a risk for your neighbors or you, but it does. It's a risk for our firefighters who would have to go up there to respond to a call at your home or to neighbors' homes. It's a very flammable plant, and it puts your neighbors at risk as well. And that's what this ordinance is all about, the ability of our firefighters to go in there and protect not only your house and you and your loved ones, but also your neighbors.
With all due respect, sir, the 2 blocks away from us is Lafayette, and they don't have this ordinance, and there are properties that look like they are gin distilleries with full acres full of high things. If anything's going to cause a problem or a wildfire, it's going to hit there long before it gets to us. Anything that gets to us, nobody's neighbor is going to get it from us. We're above everybody by 100 feet. Fire doesn't grow down in dirt. It's just like, we are not going to be the source of a fire.
Excuse me, Director Danziger, can you finish? I think there's time for rebuttal later, but.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Okay, I wanted to ask the fire chief something else too. Dr. Zeller said that his property is not an acre. And I'd like to, he showed us something from.
Yes, sir. I just pulled it up on Landglide that we use. We show it's 1.07 acres.
Okay.
And
so-
I'm happy to
And it-
go to the official county website, and if the county says it's under an acre, then absolutely he would not be required to
Thank you.
comply with 2308.
And that's for the Baccharis, right?
Yeah, that's for the.
That has
perimeter
nothing to do with
filtering.
the juniper.
But 2308 is for properties greater than an acre. They have to have the 100-foot fuel break. If he's under an acre, that means the whole parcel has to be compliant.
Okay.
So it's really a
We
difference
always
without a
have it.
difference because,
Well, Dr.
This is a
Zeller, I would
practice-
disagree with you on
Yeah.
that, sir.
okay.
You were pointing out, the photos were pointing out stuff that wasn't even on our property, like Camellia brush that was the next door neighbor down the hills. So, we only have like that, 10 feet that goes down the hill. That's our property. And your agent took a picture of stuff that's on somebody else's property and said, you're in trouble for this.
So, Chief, I have one last question. And this paper that Dr. Zeller and his wife gave us just now, he designates the south part, he says southern pedestrian walkway. And we know right now it is a road. Could he, I'm not saying you want to do this, could he actually tear that out with the city? That's a city, the city would have to approve that, right?
The city and the fire district, sir, that is removal of fire apparatus access road. So what would be required to allow that is the other road would have to be 18 feet in width,
Okay.
and it would have to have a fire department approved turnaround. And there's 4 different options for the
Okay.
turnaround: a T, a roundabout, like a small cul-de-sac, a Y type turnaround.
Okay.
And that would be today's code, not the code from when the property was originally built and developed.
Today. Okay, understood.
This is Director Jacks. How much time is allotted for this particular proceeding this evening? I mean, we're kind of going around in circles.
Yeah.
How do we,
I think we just
Director
move
Jay
forward.
Max is nicely saying Romer's talking too much, and I concede that.
I think we just
shut up.
proceed. Yeah, I think, do you have a
One,
question?
one last question for the chief, if I could. So in 1956, and I was just barely around in 1956, did these laws about having to have turnarounds and everything exist? So do we have any documentation that shows that this was required when the contractor built that house?
Yeah, yes, sir. We have what was at the time called the Uniform Fire Code. And we have some of those old documents from way back when. I think I have, it might be in the 40s, the Uniform Fire Code. I have several of them. And that requirement has been there as far as I'm aware. Because when I look back, that 150 feet haven't, and why I believe that the narrow road, that was allowed back then because fire engines weren't as monstrous as they are today. So we had narrower road width requirements.
But I guess where I'm heading is, it seems to me there are a lot of, I haven't gone around and looked at them, but it seems to me there are a lot of roads in Orinda that are, or driveways that are 150 feet long that don't have cul-de-sacs at the end of them. And so I'm just wondering, was it, it might have been code, but did it really get enforced? And if it didn't get enforced and these guys just happened to have built a road, it seems to me that's quasi grandfathered relative to having a road you can get up to their house and safely deal with their house, which I would say, I guess the question is, are we, looking at this one and saying, gee, you happen to have those 2 roads. Some pretty large percentage of other lots in a similar situation don't have 2 roads. So they might not have met the code back then, but pretty sure we can't go back and make them meet a code that once they built their house. So, I'm just wondering if it really is, how do we know, is there something in a permit that said you have to do X, or is there a, did we have to run things by the fire department to make sure that they met the code back in 1956?
The law, yes, sir. They were supposed to do it. Now, did they do it? I don't know. We'd have to go dig up in the city or the county building department what was approved at the time. So if that, and I believe that circular driveway was approved. So if he's changing that, he's now changing the approval process, and it would trigger today's codes for the fire apparatus, not his building. We couldn't say, hey, go sprinkler your building, go put non-combustible siding on your house. But if you're triggering the roads, you're changing the status quo. You get to follow today's codes for the road. There are plenty of areas that our previous fire marshals and fire chiefs didn't enforce the code. We deal with that quite frequently, and unfortunately, I don't have a good reason why they didn't.
Let's move on to public comment.
All right, public comment is now open. And we do have one hand raised. Vince Wells.
I apologize. That's by accident.
Okay, thank you. So we do not have any public comment. And we will move on to rebuttal by staff.
Just a real quick rebuttal, directors. Dr. Zeller said that his property is, always compliant. We inspected the property in 2022 and 2024. We do have noted violations of both those years as well as the current violation for 2025. It was not inspected in 23. I want to note in our 22 case, in both 22 and 24, a initial inspection was done, violations were found. In 22, we had the assessment information letter. Then by 24, we had the citation ordinance, so it was a pre-citation. Compliance was gained after notice was sent to Dr. Zeller. I do want to recognize that fact. But back in 22, the case notes from Inspector Steve Chow drove over to 470, made contact with owner Susan, informed of required mitigation, briefed on walls of juniper lining the long driveway, which need to be cleared 10 feet back by 2023. So they were made aware of the ordinance that was going into effect in 2023. And I would also say, there is vegetation at the toe of the slope, at the bottom of the slope. And to Director Jorgens, your point, sir, if it's going to slough, it's going to slough from the bottom. There's no evidence of any landslide or soil instability by an expert or us visually being up on Dr. Zeller's property to suggest that removing the juniper on top is going to cause a landslide or an issue down below. And also to the point about removing the circular driveway, we would entertain that idea, but it has to meet today's code, which is 18-foot wide on the uphill side, and then a turnaround at approved turnaround at the backside.
Okay, and we will now move on
Questions
to.
later, I think. Yeah, we get questions later. Yeah.
So we will go ahead and move on to rebuttal by appellant. If you wish to, you can have 5 more minutes.
I think that we stay here.
Okay, thank you. So now we have final board questions of appellant, final board questions of staff.
I have one more question, and I'm sorry, you said it's a staff. So I think there is an issue about the size of the actual property. So if you could just follow up on that, but if it is, it's a big difference if it's an acre or not. So we'll see what that comes to.
Yes, sir.
We're opening, if we open that up to look into that, it could even end up being more mitigation than it is now. I'm just saying.
If it's more than an acre, great, we'll get that property value will go up.
Well, but it also,
From 6 years, it's.
but it also means 100-foot break around the property. So,
Yeah.
so maybe you guys will talk about that, but
We
okay.
know it's the size, it's been
Okay.
since 1959.
All right.
Did you have a question?
I guess the other question is, are we then going to be proactive and go around and find every other person that doesn't have a turnaround that has a 150-foot long driveway in Orinda and Moraga? Because that's kind of what we're doing.
No, sir, we don't have the staff time to do that, but Dr. Zeller brought that to us. We didn't go out and find that issue. And there's plenty of properties in the district that are not compliant with the building code, that something was allowed when it shouldn't have been allowed.
A minor point, we're certainly not here to punish the sellers. We're here to protect them as best we can, as imperfectly as we can. I know they paid the $100 fine up front as a condition of getting the appeal, but I know in the past, we've waived fines when we've had compliance with the codes. And I'm guessing that we would be happy to, I mean, we can't waive it. I don't know if there's a mechanism for returning the fine if we get compliance on this, but I'm guessing that that's something we'd be open to, correct?
Yes, sir, absolutely. We do that frequently.
Right.
Any other questions from the board?
Hearing none, so we will close the public portion of the hearing. The board will discuss, deliberate, make findings, and take a final action by motion.
Well,
Silence now.
I've spoken too much already. I'm trying to keep my mouth shut.
Well, we're looking for a motion.
I-
right? Is that what?
Well, I think we can discuss what we think a motion
Okay.
should be, but I think first you already brought it up. We need
Okay.
to find out the size of the parcel.
That's one minor.
One minor thing, right? And then what do we do with the rest?
Mhm.
And so before you, the resolution 2519 is to uphold, modify, or dismiss the citation. That is the resolution.
Is that one of the three?
Correct.
I just have a question. I mean, Jonathan, this is probably a question for council.
I was just.
Can we choose something other than one of those three? Can we?
Sure, of course.
Send it back for further?
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation, obviously, you're going to have to decide how you want to rule, but there are two alleged violations here. One of which relates to the juniper and the other relates to the fuel break, which relates to the acreage issue. So my suggestion is that you vote to either affirm or not affirm the first violation, the juniper violation, and then defer conclusion on the second violation until we nail down the 1 acre issue.
Okay.
But I think given the amount of testimony, it would make sense to rule on the first one, which is not, I mean, you've heard the facts that exist.
Okay.
I thought there were three choices you could.
I'm sorry, your microphone, please.
Sorry, I thought there were three choices. You could approve it, disapprove it, or modify it. So do we have
That's
to come
right.
up
You
with a
can-
compromise if we want to?
Yes, you can do what you want to do. Yes, you can. Absolutely. So what I'm suggesting, again, is you sever out the violation relating to the 1 acre question.
Yeah, that one's,
Because there is information that needs to be gathered on that issue.
it's a dead.
We put that aside. We neither affirm nor reverse that conclusion. You just defer that conclusion and rule on the issue of the juniper violation or alleged violation now, which you can do again. You could among your options, you could say, yes, they're in violation, but we'll waive the fine. That would be one thing you could do. Or, you could affirm it in entirety. Because there's been no compliance at this point, and that is our policy generally not to waive unless there's compliance. Or again, you could reverse.
Or we could modify that and come to a compromise. As an example, we would, I'm not saying we should, agree with what he said.
You could agree with what he said. The one challenge you will have is if you want to modify it in a way that involves the chief's discretion, that's a little more challenging. So there are judgments that the chief makes that the board isn't empowered to make. You could kick it back to him to make a different judgment, but you'd have to kick it back to him to do that.
If
So
it was a
let's say you wanted to
compromise,
do-
yeah, if it was a compromise, we would have to go back to the chief. If it was.
That's right. If
This isn't a
it's
fire road, we
compromise,
have
like
to go back
you get to keep half of it, for example, that would have to be approved. You'd have to kick that back to the chief and we'd have to bring it back at a subsequent meeting.
Okay, I got it.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Completely.
Okay, well,
Thoughts?
Well, I think I.
Can I try a motion then? It
Oh,
seems
go
to me.
ahead. I was
that-
gonna, he wants to do it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You try it.
So as I understand what you're saying is that we would affirm all of the paragraphs on 52, except for the second, which we would defer. And then we would uphold the first paragraph at the top of page 53. We uphold with the exception that we defer findings on the 100-foot violation. And then we affirm the last paragraph.
I think that's correct.
Is that close to what you have in mind
Yeah,
here?
exactly. So I'm sorry. So let me just, 'cause it took me a
It's
minute
on
to
page,
turn.
page 52 and 53 of the
Uh,
board packet.
So if you wished to affirm on the Juniper and defer on the
100-foot fuel break.
foot, yeah, you would, let's see, I'm sorry, tell me again which
The second.
identified.
It's the second paragraph only on page 52 that we would defer.
That's right.
Everything else is affirmed. Everything else seems pretty procedural. It's basically the hearing was conducted. They were giving notice. They presented the hearing. And then it's the top paragraph on 53 in which we're upholding the portion regarding the Juniper, but deferring, I guess we're upholding and deferring the 100-foot pending further factual findings.
So, right, you'd be upholding the, that's right. That's correct.
All right, so this is Director Romer. I make a motion that pursuant to pages 52 and 53, that we affirm all paragraphs on page 52, except for the second paragraph regarding the 100-foot fuel break ordinance. Then on page 53, we therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors upholds the findings of the department regarding the Juniper violation, but defer pending future factual findings, the 100-foot fuel break. We further resolve that the property owners are hereby notified as to their procedural rights, and we pass, approve, and adopt the resolution as stated. Do we have a second?
I second it.
I do have one question. Do we need to put a timeline on adherence to this?
I don't know that we do. I think it depends on, it's the time frame for making the factual investigation and determination as the property size, right? I mean, it would be nice to have it resolved by next month, and I'm sure everybody would prefer it that way, but
I think what we could do is this. I think if our conclusion is that in fact it's under a full acre, then obviously we'll dismiss the section that's set on that ground and won't bring it back. If our conclusion is more than an acre, then we'll bring it back to the next meeting.
all right. And I imagine that that would be acceptable to appellants because it would involve a dismissal of part of the.
Was that your question? Was
No.
your question? That was.
My question was on the Juniper portion alone, do we have is there a time frame for complying with this?
We would work with the property owner, sir.
Okay.
We
We don't have-
it wouldn't be, hey, you have 3 days to get this.
Right, right.
What
No,
is a
but I was
reasonable
thinking-
amount of time?
We're thinking
to-
60 days or whatever. We don't need to put that into the resolution?
No, I don't think so, because you're just finding a violation
Okay.
at this point. There's no, but I would say this, just to the appellant, that if there isn't compliance, that it is our practice to levy additional fines. So just to be clear about that, but those would then come before you if you appealed them.
Got it.
Okay.
So do I have a second?
Yes,
Director Jex?
yes.
Director Danziger?
Aye.
Director Jex?
Aye.
Director Jorgens?
Aye.
Director Romer?
Aye.
President Hassler?
Aye.
And that concludes our item. Item 7.1, announcements. Brief information only reports related to meetings attended by a director at district expense.
I have one comment before we move forward. Just for tonight, well, for all nights, probably, for presentations that are going to be made to the board, please keep them under 5 minutes. It's 8:15 now, and we want to keep the meeting on track. So you might have prepared documents. We will read them if we don't get through them, but 5 minutes for our presentations.
Were there any related meetings attended? None.
None.
Questions, informational comments from board members and staff? None. Communications received were none. We will now go on to fire chief updates, and we will hear the finance report.
Good evening, directors. I have a brief finance report this evening. We'll start with strike team reimbursement. The strike team receivable for fiscal year 2025 is $1.8 million. We've received payments of $1.6 million. So we have a net receivable outstanding of $195,692. Our estimated receivable for fiscal year 26 to date is $434,000. We've received no payments, so we have an outstanding receivable of $434,000. The fiscal year 25 numbers, there are 2 invoices outstanding that make up the $195,000 receivable, and those are pending payment with OES. And fiscal year 26, those numbers are based on F-42s that we have received to date. Next slide, please. Treasury bill update. The district now has $20,115,000 invested in treasury bills. The treasury bill maturities are listed below, and staff will project cash flows to determine the amount of reinvestment available when treasury bills mature. Next slide. Other items, the fiscal year 2025 audit took place the week of August 25th. That concludes my report, unless there are any questions.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Human resources.
Good evening, directors. Tonight I have a recruitment update. For a senior single role paramedic, we originally entered 3 candidates into the background process. 2 have withdrawn. 1 has been successful and has passed all of the background components. The start date will be Monday, September 29th. For single role paramedic, we entered 4 into the background process. 1 withdrew, and the other 3 candidates have successfully passed and will start on Monday, September 29th. For single role EMT, a decision was made to move the candidates forward through the background earlier than expected. And so we have 4 candidates moving through the background process at this time. And unless there are any questions, this concludes my HR update.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My question is, it sounds like we didn't get enough candidates. So are we opening up again? What's the plan? Do we have a plan to, I mean, definitely didn't get enough for single role, as a senior. And I don't think we did, we wanted how many for single role paramedic? 3?
3 and 3.
And we got 3.
Mhm.
Okay, so, but single role, are we gonna open that again? The senior, sorry.
Yes, sir. We are working on a flyer right now to reopen and refly those positions. This is a moving target. We originally had, enough paramedics. We pivoted from paramedic EMT to bring all the paramedics to make sure we got them and they didn't go somewhere. We had 3 of them withdraw from the process or drop out of the process, which required us to pivot again and to bring on some EMTs. We understand that we're probably going to lose 1 or 2 in the 5-call process. That's what history shows us. So as we're moving through that process, we're also recruiting. And this is what agencies are finding with the single role process. It's just a continual recruitment, testing process and keeping that list going.
So if we open up the senior again, I'm not sure, did I hear you say we're gonna open up the EMT again, or?
Right now, I believe we're good on EMTs. We have a deep enough list. If we start calling EMTs and say, hey, you were on our list, we're ready to hire you, you know, and they say, oh, I took another job, yeah, then we're gonna have to fly those positions as well.
Okay, so we have a list from the initial recruitment, right? Is that what you're saying? And so now we're gonna start going down the list?
Yes, we have a list for EMTs at this time.
Okay,
We've exhausted the list for both the senior paramedics and the single role paramedics.
okay.
Are the background checks expensive?
They are $700 a piece.
So just as a thought, if it, you know, I don't know why they withdrew the two, but, you know, is it that our process is taking a long time and they get other offers and things? So, you know, $700 relative to what it costs to go through all the rest of the process is probably pretty small. So why don't we run that earlier on the people so we don't have to wait for that? And as soon as we're deciding, you know, we've decided that we like them, we already know they're okay. Because going through, spending your time, spending all the people who interviewed some time, all that seems, that's gonna cost a lot more than $700. So, and you already found good candidates that, you know, passed everybody's approval, but then they left while you were doing the background check. So I don't know, it just seems like something we ought to think about is shortening the process a little bit if we could.
Yes, sir, we will absolutely do that. We do have to give conditional offers to do the different portions of the background.
Okay.
So it kind of ties our hands a little bit there with the time frame, conditional offer to move through medical. You pass medical, a conditional offer for the other portions of the background. And then when everything's complete and you've passed, now a conditional offer with a start date. And directors, we have more information on this when we get to the single role update further in the agenda.
All right,
Great,
thank you.
Thank you.
Fire prevention report.
Good evening, directors. I'll be presenting the fire prevention report for August. The exterior hazard abatement inspections are ongoing. 505 inspections were completed. These inspections continue to generate chipping requests. Chipping is conducted once a week using a combination of contract services and the MOFD chipper truck. For state mandated inspections, I am pleased to report that all St. Mary's dormitory inspections are now in compliance.
Wow.
I continue to meet with the facilities team to ensure compliance is maintained and address strategies for reducing nuisance alarms. My staff completed 41 R2 apartment inspections. 29 are compliant. The remainder have extensions with correction plans. School inspections began in September. Yeah, next slide. Oh, no, we're good. 12 new construction inspections were completed last month, a sign of steady growth in our community. Alongside this growth, residents continue to take advantage of the home hardening grant program. The majority of inquiries through the office are questions pertaining to vent mesh and gutter guards. The community wildfire safety ambassadors have completed 491 assessments this year, and MOFD now has 38 new Firewise communities. And lastly, National Fire Prevention Week is October 5th through the 11th. This year's theme is Charge into Fire Safety, Lithium-ion batteries in your home. The fire prevention team will be sharing public safety messages on social media, on the marquee in front of the administrative building, and at the fire prevention table at open house on October 11th. So please stay tuned.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
It's great news on St. Mary's.
Yeah,
Been a long
that's
time coming.
amazing. A long time.
Miracle worker.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Operations.
They can party safely.
Hi, good evening, directors. I'll be giving tonight's operational report since the last time we met. Beginning with a busy slide here that you see before you. It's a definition of what a cardiac field save is. And to sum this up, a cardiac field save is somebody that receives a myocardial infarction or something that causes the heart to stop beating. So essentially, somebody that is dead. A cardiac field save is intervention with advanced life support from our firefighter paramedics. the intervene and get the heart responding again. So essentially, you will have a pulse again. That summarizes this slide. And tonight, I'd like to review one call in particular. Next slide, please. Over the course of the last 3 weeks, we've had 3 cardiac codes, which is a stop of cardiac event in your heart, 2 of which resulted into cardiac field saves. This is one of them. It involved an elderly male in a local restaurant. The patient was found with what we call PEA, or pulseless electrical activity. Interventions from our firefighter paramedics on scene were able to dislodge some food in the patient's airway, and eventually resulted in what we call a return of spontaneous circulation, or ROSC, en route to the facility. When our staff turned over care to the local hospital, the patient had a palpable pulse. This is a direct reflection of the work that our firefighter medics participated in, and were successful with aggressive paramedicine activities. And we're very proud to represent this. Next slide. As always, we stay very busy, particularly this time of year, with out-of-county mutual aid assignments. Here's a list of some recent assignments that our staff has taken at various overhead positions. And I want to note, as a PSA, this time of year, we see communities get very complacent with weather, with overcast. But like always, it's a battle between when the rain comes. Is it before or after the wind? So please pay attention to local weather, and we anticipate some changes in the coming days. Next slide. This is an event with Congressman Mark DeSagnier's office that was attended by Chief Isaacs and myself, along partnership with Contra Costa County Fire Chief Louis Bouchard. Well attended. That picture on the bottom left is a question card that was asked by our community members. It was informational, and certainly after the event as well, we fielded a lot of questions from our community, and we appreciate everybody that was in attendance. Next slide. This picture is a fire at approximately 16:30 hours on September 4th. This was a fire in the Orchard Road neighborhood in Orinda. A structure fire involved the garage. Fortunately, we were able to confine and extinguish the fire to the area of origin before entering into the home. There were no injuries reported on scene. We were able to evacuate the home. No injuries from residents as well. Next slide. I want to highlight this. This picture on the left was taken from a video, a snapshot when the fire was burning. The picture on your right is the efforts of overhaul. This is an exposure to the bare studs of the structure, investigation, so to make sure that there's no heat beneath the walls. We use a thermal imaging camera also to determine that there's no heat within. I know this is a challenging photo for homeowners to see as we dig through the home, but it's important for us to make sure that the fire is completely extinguished. And before we leave, we clean up as best we can to turn over a product to the homeowner. But we're proud to say that we were able to get a quick jump on this fire. Next slide. And last, this is our ambulance supervisor, Mr. Niels Tangerlini, working with our local Boy Scout troop for hands-only CPR. It was well attended. This is a good effort to kick off many of what will be future events to spread awareness to our communities about how citizens can intervene if and when expressed with concerns of a cardiac event in our own communities. And I'll leave with, as our fire marshal just mentioned, on October 11th from 8 to 10:30, our pancake breakfast in Moraga, Station 41, which is our best thing that we do. Speaking for myself and the firefighters, staff that attend to make it successful, to open our doors to the communities. And we hope everybody can attend. pending any questions, this concludes my report.
Just on the fire on Orchard, any origin on that?
The fire remains under investigation. We have the origin of where it started, but the cause is undetermined currently.
Okay. And do we have any people on deployment right now?
We do. We do. We actually have one captain just returned yesterday. We have another captain that's out currently. And like I said, we have a weather coming in the forecast, which could result in potential dry lightning. And that's reflected on our signs, our fire danger signs currently.
Is it the Garnett fire they're still on, or?
Is that one? Marquardt is on the Garnett fire, yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Thanks.
And so we will now open public comment for the announcements. We do not have any hands raised or public comment. We had open public comment earlier on the agenda. We do not have any hands raised.
Okay.
And we did receive one written public comment from Nick Warrenoff, and that was sent to the directors and is available on our website. We'll now open public comment for the consent agenda. We do not have any public comment on the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
A second.
Director Danziger?
Aye.
Director Jex?
Aye.
Director Jorgens?
Aye.
Director Romer?
Aye.
President Hassler?
Aye.
Item 10.1 is for the draft Gatsby 75 OPEB valuation report.
Good evening, directors. A draft of the OPEB actuarial evaluation as of June 30, 2025 has been completed, and the district's OPEB funding policy has been reviewed and updated. At the August board meeting, the board directed use of a discount rate of 6.25%. The draft report has been prepared using 6.25%. I would like to introduce Roger Burton, consulting actuary with GovInvest, who will review the draft actuarial valuation.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Should I share the screen? Will you share the screen? Does everyone have a copy of the report?
Sharing the screen's great if you can.
All right, so,
I'm going to stop share so you can share.
okay. All right. Okay, I will attempt to keep this brief. It is a long report, but a lot of the exhibits are different ways of looking at the same results. So I will try to concentrate on the key results, but please feel free to interrupt or ask questions as we go. All right, so GASB 7 OPEB valuation report. So what this measures is the district's liability for retiree health. It's an attempt to say how much money you should theoretically have in an account to cover the promises you've made for retiree healthcare benefits if the plan were to end on the valuation date, which is June 30th, 2025. The idea being that you could take the money in the account and give it out to all the participants in the plan, and they could use that money to buy their health care. So that's one way of looking is what this liability represents. Of course, that's not what's going to happen in practice, but that's what needs to be recorded in the books. All right. Okay, so I'm going to skip to the results. There's a lot of introductory material there. So last year, your total liability was $15,395,380. That's in this row here, about 5 lines down in terms of the numbers. This year we saw an increase in that amount to $16,865,836, and I will go over the reasons for the increase on the next page. In here, we break the amount down into the portion that is attributable to active employees, and then attributable to the existing retirees. The active employees will retire in the future and will have earned benefits, so we need to include them. Now, I mentioned having money in an account. So you do have money in an account. That is the fiduciary net position here in this row. And so you can see that last year you had $4.6 million in the account. This year, the value of that has increased to 5.7. But unfortunately, the increase was not enough to offset the increase in the liability. So your net liability, which is the difference between the two, has gone from 10.8 million to 11.1 million. Hopefully in the future, your liability won't grow as fast as it did this year. There's some, hopefully one-time changes there that we won't see next year. But again, no promises. It's impossible to predict the future, although we do try. So you were 30% funded last year, you're 34% funded this year. So the percentage actually increased. So liability goes on the balance sheet and the expense goes in the income statement. So of the change in the liability, according to the GASB rules, you're going to book an expense of $1 million. And there's a page later in the exhibit where I can show you where that comes from. The actuarially determined contribution, the amount that you contribute to the trust, plus the benefits that you're paying outside of the trust, which count as a contribution, and a credit for the implicit subsidy make up the contribution. So for this year, that amount was just under $1.6 million. I will show you the components of that in a later exhibit. All right, and the bottom shows the results graphically. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next page. I'm going to try to keep this under 5 minutes. So this page shows you what changed from last year to this year. And the key drivers of the change that are unusual. Each year you add service cost, which is the benefits earned by the active employees working. And then there's an interest component. But there's a change in the census. So your demographics changed. People got older. The people you hired had slightly different profile, age profile. We didn't do a detailed analysis. Well, we do have a little more detailed analysis in the back, but so that's a normal change, $284,000. Nothing too unusual about that, but it did increase your liability. The bigger one was that the CalPERS premiums increased. And I'll go ahead and answer a question that's come up before, which is the amount that you pay for retiree benefits is capped. So why would claims going up cause an increase in the liability? The answer is that implicit subsidy, which I mentioned before. Retirees who are under Medicare age are buying plans in the CalPERS pool, which is pooled together with active employees. And so since this measures the retiree liability, and retirees cost more on average than active employees, we have to account for that difference in cost, that implicit subsidy. The active employees are paying a little bit more than they would if they were rated on their own, and the retirees are paying a little bit less. So that, in essence, is that implicit subsidy. And going back to the idea that the liability is the amount that you could give out to your existing participants and they could go buy the insurance on their own. If your retirees on those subsidized plans were to go out and buy the insurance on their own, they'd have to pay a little bit more than they're paying now to get the same plan. Because on the open market, their premiums would be based on their age. So that's what that implicit subsidy measures. Okay, so that's why an increase in claims, greater than expected, claims went up a bit this year, is increasing by 1.1 million. So there's a change in the trends. We updated mortality tables, changed the payroll growth rate slightly to match current conditions, and some changes in some of the other assumptions. Some minor ups and downs there. Yeah, so the net of those changes was $16,000, not much. Then we subtract out the benefits paid and a credit for the implicit subsidy that was theoretically paid, not in reality, but we have to account for it. We add it to the liability, we take it away from take away a portion each year as each year plays out. Okay, any questions about that? That's the big portion of the report.
Nope.
All right, I will move on to a couple of the other exhibits that I mentioned. Again, a lot of these exhibits are just showing you how the different parts come together. I'll mention quickly that changes in experience and changes in assumptions are amortized over a period of years, that period of years being the expected number of years that your employees on average have until they become vested or become eligible for retired benefits, another way to put it. And that's 4.9 years at the time. However, changes in investments are amortized, expected versus actual are amortized over 5 years. And that's just GASB rule. Investments 5 years, all the other ones amortized over your expected average remaining service lifetime, they called it. And that's important because in the expense, as I mentioned, is kind of the rules-based recording of the change in the liability. And the difference between the actual change in liability and what goes into the expense is that you are amortizing some of those changes. So you have, instead of the changes in experience, you have the recognized differences between, or recognized experience changes and recognized assumption changes. And the recognized portion being the portion of the change that is amortized this year, plus the portions of the changes in the past that are being recognized this year. So that's essentially what the expense is recording the change in the liability with those amortization limits. Okay, I mentioned the actuarially determined contribution. So let's talk about that. To determine that, we amortize your net liability, the difference between the liability and what you have in your trust fund. And we're trying to amortize that over a closed period of 20 years. Currently, this year, you're down to 11 years, and then 10 years next year and 9 years the year after that. When you get down close to that expected average remaining service lifetime of 4.9 years, say 5 years, we'll probably recommend that you go to like a 5-year rolling amortization period to kind of just smooth out any big bumps up or down in that number. But for now, we're sticking with the closed 20-year period. And so amortizing that over those remainder of years is adding, $1 million, just 1.1 million this year, 1.2 estimated next year, 1.2 estimated the year after that. So on the next page, this is how we calculate what you need to put into the fund. So it's the benefits earned during the year, that amortization piece that we just looked at, admin expenses, you need to budget for that, and then interest on that to bring it to the end of the year. And that's your total recommended contribution. And as I mentioned, you're paying benefits outside of the trust. So that counts as a contribution. It's an immediate into the trust fund and immediately out to pay those benefits. So that's why it counts as a contribution, even though it doesn't actually ever enter the trust. So that's estimated to be $901,000 this year. So you subtract that from the 1.5 million. You can also subtract a portion of that the implicit subsidy to reduce that, because the implicit subsidy goes into the liability, so it also comes out. And then the difference between all those is $405,000. So 405 is what you actually put in to the trust fund to meet the actuarially determined contribution. And the idea being, of course, that if you contribute these amounts each year, that you will reach full funding within 11 years.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to show a couple graphs. So these are projected benefit payments. Note that this is just for people in the plan. It doesn't include future employees. So like when it says future retirees, that means they're currently active employees who then retire in the future. And so as expected, the numbers will gradually reach zero because your population is eventually the existing population will eventually be replaced through either termination or death. So there's an increase as costs go up, but then that's overtaken by people leaving the plan. And so you see that it eventually goes down. It's a little jagged because the valuation is done on a person by person basis. And so, the individual people reaching retirement age or, reaching a termination probability makes it a little jagged. All right. Next one is.
I think we're better 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think.
Projected payroll. This
Is
does
there any
project.
last highlights you want to share with us? And I think we're going to move on to the next
Move
step.
on. Okay. Yeah, so just the projected employer contributions is bottom one here. So you can see that over 11 years, your contributions will increase steadily until you pay off that liability. And then after that, it's just going to be covering the service costs. So a big drop after 11 years, and then just kind of a steady growth after that. Yeah, your fund is expected to remain solvent. So that's it. Yeah, I think those are the key points.
Thank you.
And thank you. And Gloria, and how do these numbers compare with what we put in our budget?
The contribution for the current fiscal year 2026 is exactly the right amount.
It is. Okay, great.
Good.
Thank you so much for the presentation.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I just want to ask one question. The funding policy, exactly the same, no changes, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So you need a motion now, right?
And public comment first. And so public comment is open. And we do not have any public comment, and so we can now entertain a motion.
Well, I would move that we approve the draft funding or approve the OPEB funding policy that is included in the presentation.
Second.
Director Danziger?
Aye.
Director Jex?
Aye.
Director Jorgen?
Aye.
Director Romer?
Aye.
President Hassler?
Aye.
Moving on to item 10.2. Approve investment policy statement and target asset allocation. For this.
At the August board meeting, the board authorized a new investment advisor for the district's investments in the Section 115 Plan Trust. The new investment advisor is BFSG LLC. The next step in the process is for the board to approve a new investment policy and determine the target asset allocation for the investments in the trust. Tonight in attendance from BFSG are Michael Albee, Senior Portfolio Manager, and Darren Stewart, Senior Retirement Plan Consultant.
Good evening, directors. Thank you for having us. Darren is going to be presenting the investment policy statement, and then I'll be going through the asset allocation, the target asset allocation.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And I'll go through this real quickly and just point out a couple of key areas, and then obviously open for any questions. On page 2, if we can flip to that of the investment policy statement, you guys may have noticed a couple highlighted areas. Are you guys able to see this in the room?
Yes, this is
Okay,
page
perfect.
95 of our packet.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So page 195, you'll see a couple highlighted areas, and those are simply to make sure that the purpose of the plan and the overview are aligned with what the board intends them to be. So we just wanted to verify that those are consistent with the intentions of the plan. If we flip to the next page, there is a preferences section on the bottom, which is our understanding of the way the board would like investment management of these plans to incur. This includes a preference for passively managed mutual funds and exchange traded funds, versus actively managed, a preference for domestic investments over foreign investments, a preference for large cap equities over small equities, and a preference for higher equity exposure in general. And then if we flip to, and excuse me, I don't have the page in the board agenda, but it says Appendix B performance measurement standards. It's about 3 pages on in the packet. This is our measurement for picking funds, for picking mutual funds to fill the allocation. Our intention would only to be using actively managed funds in the fixed income and the real estate sleeves, so really small portions. And Mike's going to go through, potential allocations for those sleeves. If you guys wanted to ultimately say we just want everything passive, that can be accommodated as well, and we would not need this Appendix B then. As this speaks to evaluating active managers. Any questions on the base before I turn it over to Mike? You'll see at the very end of that IPS document, there's a target asset allocation section where based on your guys' decisions, we'll fill in the minimum, the target, and the maximum allocation for us to manage to in each of the key asset classes. Any questions though on the IPS itself before we get into the allocations?
Well, this is kind of an allocation question, but did you look at where we're currently having our money invested?
Right before this meeting, yes. I got it as I walked in.
Okay.
So I can comment on that as well compared to what we looked at on the asset allocation.
They were just all ETFs. In other words, it was all passively managed, not actively managed, for example.
Which, yeah, and that's, I know was the preference, and that's kind of where we're leaning at as well throughout the asset allocation. What the asset allocation was mainly was just looking at the percentages. But then again, on the passive side, we're looking at tracking air very tight, costs very low, and then just the depth of the market depth and with the iShares ETFs that you have currently, those are very, funds that are very low cost and tight tracking there.
Yep.
And Vanguard I saw as well.
Okay. That was my only question.
So with that, on the pivoting from the IPS on the asset allocation, aligning with those preferences that Darren just went through in the investment policy statement, we ran and we started with a target return of 6.75%. I believe that was communicated to us. So that's what we went through and then did 3 different kind of portfolio permeations off of that and using the efficient frontier where you're really trying to just find the optimal portfolio based on risk and reward. And with that, on the asset allocation, this is on the, again, sorry, I apologize. I do not have the page number of the board packet.
201.
Okay, 201, thank you. It will show the efficient frontier and what we're trying to do again is build that optimal portfolio. The 6.75 net portfolio, based on the long-term capital market assumptions, we are using JP Morgan's long-term capital market assumptions. They project 10 to 15 years. They are a starting point. Every forecast is going to have errors. It's hard to forecast where things are going over 10, 15 years. But that's what we use to build the efficient frontier. And that 6.75 net is coming back and with the analysis saying large cap US should only be 32%, bond should be 18%, and so on, which is the 6.75 net portfolio. Again, knowing what the preferences were, we then created other portfolios and they all are able to achieve that target return and have a similar Sharpe ratio, which is a risk-adjusted statistic. 0.58, 0.57, 0.56. The 85% equity adjusted portfolio is the 85% stock, 15% bond portfolio. Again, I just saw it was 5% bonds that you have today versus 15%. So that is a change. The equity large cap allocation, US is a similar exposure. And then international would be an increase from, I think it was 8% up to 13%. and reduction mainly in small, mid-sized US stocks.
All right, so
Yeah, go ahead.
just as a recap for the last, I don't know, 9 years, somebody, your predecessor would come in, and every time I would ask them how they did relative to the S&P 500. Every single time they said they underperformed them. And of course, they also charged us a fee.
Yep.
And, you know, the Sarah folks have a similar issue, by the way, over only the last 20 years in this case. So I guess I'm going to ask the question next year. And to me, when I look at the things that we are currently invested in, for example, there are things that have, you know, the S&P 500 has a beta 1 and everything is kind of relative to that. But because it is, you know, companies that are in basically every industry you can name, and most of them are in every country you can name, at least, you know, the top 20 you can name. It seems to me that you know, I'm not saying we should just invest in that, but bonds, for example, you know, have historically way underperformed, you know, the stock market. I mean, that's just what it's all about. So I guess I'm a little confused. I'm not sure who said that our target was 6.75%. I mean, that's an assumption that we have to put in models when we look at these things and say, what's a reasonable rate of return for the market? And people, you know, the state was using a 7% or a 7.5%, you know, a few years ago. And we decided that that was unrealistically high in the market at that time. But I'm not sure I would want to come at designing a portfolio to earn a certain return other than what I think the market is returning. And I'm going to define the market maybe differently. A good indicator of the market is the S&P 500, in my opinion.
And I would agree. It's the benchmark. It's the largest market in the world. And it's typically the most widely referenced benchmark is the S&P 500.
Right. And I've mentioned this before, but, you know, Warren Buffett made a wonderful bet with, I think anybody that was any comer, $1 million over a 10-year period, if they could be, you know, as an actively managed, you know, the best managers in the world, and he won, right? And he gave the money to charity. But so for me, when I look at the things that we currently have, and I see bonds, for example, and they earned, sorry, I got probably the glasses.
Yeah, and if you actually go to the last page of that, it will show the historical 10-year returns.
Yeah.
Bonds have earned 1.52% the last 10 years.
Right.
US equities have returned 14.06, blowing everything else out of the water, like you have mentioned historically the last decade. So
I guess my question to you, for us to give you guidance, I'm not sure I would have started with a target rate of return, because I think that drives a lot of other things, and that might be below what JP Morgan thinks the market's going to be, for example.
Yeah.
And that would potentially lead you to invest money in bonds and other things because you want to have theoretically lower risk, but you also end up with quite a bit lower returns. And our current people, when they invested in, you know, even the IGF, you know, the global infrastructure funds, you know, sure, it had a beta of 0.8 and a standard deviation was actually higher than the S&P, but it also earned roughly half of what the S&P earned. So for us, it's a 30-year investment. The probability of us even touching this in the next 30 years is really low. So we have a super long horizon. We're not worried about, you know, 6.75 this year or the next year. We want to, it's a long-term investment for us, which I think is different than many people that invest money. You know, they often have things that, you know, people take money out every year and put money in every year, and that's not the way we're managing this. So for me, getting rid of you talked about international, not having the international, all of our exposure in costs is in US dollars. You know, domestic people we're going to pay that live right here that want US dollars at the end of the day. So the S&P already has a huge amount of international exposure. Adding more to that in a specialized fund that does international things, to me, is adding currency risk that we really don't want, because we are going to be paying people in dollars. So I don't know, in general, you're going to see me at least feeling like I want to have you guys do the efficient thing, buy the efficient, you know, the low load or low overhead fees, which is what these guys did. They bought efficient ones, which is great. And they do accurately track, which is one of the things you already said. But for me, it's not keeping cash. It's not, because we don't need to trade things a lot, right? Which other people do. It's not having bonds personally, because I don't think they, as you just pointed out, they earn a much lower return over a long period of time than equities do. And that's been true for over 100 years, actually.
And even the forward-looking return, I mean, well, it's better than the last 10 years, at least projected to be. It's still much lower than equities. It's more there again from that risk kind of management, which I understand the long duration of the assets. So.
And that's something that when people talk about, oh, let's have, 60% in stocks and 40% in bonds. Well, that's great if you need the money, but we don't. And so I think, we're not, Joe retiree, and we're not Joe 30-year-old, especially, we aren't going to have to buy a new house or do whatever and take money out of the market and do those things. We get to hold it for a long time. So I just want that to influence what you're going to propose to us.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Director Romer, and I've spent a lot of time looking at this, as I've spent a lot of time having fun with my own investments over 30 years. And I don't claim to be a great investor, but what I have learned is that the Standard & Poor's 500 index fund is a remarkable tool. It's basically incorporating about 80% of the United States economy in every sector possible. If you want to be diversified, it seems to me that the Standard & Poor's 500 is a way of being really diversified, because you're in financials, you're in transportation, you're in energy. And it also seems to me that the Standard & Poor's 500 index funds do another remarkable thing, is that every quarter they rebalance and they reward successful firms that are moving up. If I looked the other day at the top 100 firms in the Standard & Poor's 500, and many of them did not exist 25 years ago. And they rocketed to the top because they're fulfilling a need in this economy. And the ones that don't survive get knocked off the Standard & Poor's 500. So I think I'm just echoing Director Jorgens when I say that a separate bond fund or a separate REIT, if you look at the Standard & Poor's 500, they're all issuing bonds, they're all holding bonds, they're all operating their factories and their offices on property. So it really is a way, in my mind, to be diversified, but to be diversified over a 100-year time period that you're going to get somewhere between 10 and 11%. And from my standpoint, we're looking for a long-term partnership here. We want to make things as simple for you as possible and simple for us. We're not looking to revisit this in a year or 2 or 3 or 5, but on a 10 or 20 or 30-year time frame. If we have a couple of years where the S&P is down double digits, I'm willing to be patient and ride it out with the expectation that over a 30-year time frame, or the longer we go with this particular focus, the more the probability is that we're not beating the S&P 500, but we're coming very, very close to it. So I don't know whether when you first looked at this page 8, page 201, is if you want numbers from me, I'm not sure exactly I'm prepared to do it, other than to say,
I mean, we can rerun the asset allocation with kind of from our discussion tonight and with the constraints and come back with some of those. I'll just one counterpoint on the S&P. I agree. It's, again, the biggest market in the world, very diversified from different sectors and so on. Today's S&P, though, is much more concentrated than it has been in a while. You have to go back to the 2000s to see the concentration where it is today. So that's our only concern. I mean, that and valuations where they are with large U.S.
and
companies.
those are very good points. What would you suggest in terms of mitigating the risks with regard to that?
Part of that from a valuation, I mean, you just diversify into other sectors that have small mid-cap are selling at more reasonable prices to their 20-year history.
In terms of price earnings ratio?
Not price earnings ratio, yes. And then same with international. It's selling at roughly fair value too, compared to their own 20-year history. So that's one way to do it. and then just again, the concentration risk in the US for large cap S&P 500, tech and communications makes up like 40% of the index today. We haven't seen these levels for a long period of time. So while they are very diversified companies, they're the best and largest companies in the world, the Microsofts and so on of the world. And they get money from all over different currencies and so on. And something like 40% of revenues from the S&P 500 come from overseas. So absolutely right, but there's just concentration risk. And if the tech sector goes down for some reason, the S&P 500 will feel it more. And just as an example, like the 2000 kind of era.
Sure,
where we
exactly.
kinda
I was
had
going to
that lost
say,
decade.
you have the same
So-
concerns about the internet bubble in 1999.
And I'm not saying the AI
And
is-
the AI bubble maybe, so we have to.
Yeah, it's just, I'm not saying that it is,
We
but
move
it's just a risk
slowly.
that's out there.
Yeah. No, I get it.
I think the suggestion would be, is probably a recommendation for us, but know that we have a strong preference for what's simple, right?
Yep.
Equities, we don't need, I mean, we need probably some diversification, understanding, but we're also moving, I think, isn't 60% already in S&P?
Over
That's a good
50,
point.
or roughly 50.
So that
is already-
60% is already,
Literally in the S&P.
it's in the S&P and it's
54%
grown with the
today,
S&P, everything. So I think we're just moving more into it.
The
and that's
analogy is we're right.
risk.
We've been riding a battleship. The battleship is going pretty much in terms of large cap equities and S&P 500. We're not making a right-hand turn. We're not reversing course. If anything, we may be accelerating a little bit or slowing down a little bit, but our guidance is.
I think it's heavy, well, all equity, I would say,
Yeah.
probably is number one.
Yeah.
And probably limited on
The things outside the S&P.
other things out. I mean, yes, there might be some risk that needs to be hedged, because you're the professional. I don't.
We can take those constraints
I
and
take those into consideration, and I would say suggest a portfolio, but not with a specific return in mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. I agree.
Like,
We wanna earn what the
Chief
market is.
thinks can be achieved, let's do for what they.
What's your recommendation in terms of the EAFE, index funds on Europe, Australasia, Far East?
I mean, again, using the JP Morgan, they're saying that that's the best risk reward right now on a go forward basis for the next 10-5.
Because again, because of price earnings ratios?
Because of price to earnings, that's one of the big factors coming into play there. I mean, they look at other macro things and so on, but that is one of the driving factors. The other is the currency piece of it, because they're forecasting foreign currencies to strengthen against the dollar, which you've seen very short term this year. The dollar's off 8-9% this year, and international equity, developed market equities are up 15-20% on the year right now, outpacing the S&P. It's again, very short window. But that's two of the main factors helping drive in. So they're forecasting 9.5% returns per year over the next 10 years with a standard deviation of 17.61. So you're not taking on too much risk for more reward than what they're forecasting in the US. Again,
Makes sense to me.
these are a guiding framework. It's forecasting is difficult, as I said up front.
But if everybody believed all that, they would have already bought those stock, increased their demand for those stocks, and the stock prices would have already gone up, and then all that's gone.
Yeah.
So, the forecast is literally as good as the day you make it, because if everybody acts on it, then it's not good the second day.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. So we can go back and put in those constraints and relook at the efficient frontier with 100% equity portfolio, and coming back and minimizing infrastructure, real estate, and international, and having a more US focus and centric portfolio.
Because I was going to say that the prior folks for the last, I don't know, however long, many years we've had the funds, like 7 years, have given us roughly 50% of the return that the S&P 500 had over that 7 years.
It's been hard to be diversified,
which we find to be horrific.
Yeah.
Is it okay to just say, though?
Yep, just bring it back.
The alternative, right? I mean, I would like to see what they project, right? If we were all US equity versus a slice of it be
other things, yeah.
You had the recommendation of some foreign equities because of they haven't ran up as much in
Correct.
value. So is there a possibility still to get two recommend?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
Sound a little bit like a Warren Buffett. You want to take Warren Buffett's philosophy into consideration here a little bit. I have no problem with that.
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
Darren, anything else?
Are we
you wanna
supposed to
add?
approve anything tonight, or are we just, are we approving the what they call the policy and the investment policy? Is that what we're approving?
Well, it's, the investment policy is on for approval, but obviously the last page, the page that actually shows the allocations, it doesn't sound to me like we're ready to finalize that yet.
Right. Say, can we approve the IPS conditional on the final agreement of Appendix C?
Yeah,
Sure.
yes, I think.
Okay.
I do.
So I'll
But
move.
first,
that
we're
we-
going to open
sorry.
public comment. So public comment is open. And we do not have any hands raised or received written public comment. So we can entertain a motion.
Greg, before we go
Oh,
to
one
motion.
more question.
Yeah, before we go to motion, I've opposed since the beginning, moving our funds from PARS to BFSG, and I continue to oppose it. I consider myself conservative, and I'm not as optimistic as some on the future of our financial systems in this country and in the world. We're living in very volatile times, I think very different times, climate change, current administration, everything. I think it will have an effect on the financial industry, and I just want to go on record as opposing this, and I'm going to vote no.
Okay. So can I ask a question?
You can ask, and you can ask anything you want, but yeah.
So, no, that's fine. So what would you propose we do?
Excuse me?
What would you propose we do that's different?
That we would stay with PARS.
But they are investing in just almost exactly what
I know.
we told them to.
I'm,
So
No.
you want to just pay a bigger fee and with people that are investing in the same thing? Because that's what the choice is.
I'm just staying, that's it. That's all. I don't have any more to say on this. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems to me that we're moving toward a more efficient use of our fee resources here,
We'll see.
right?
Yeah, and I mean, a couple other things. I mean, I'll just comment on the use of the funds, like little things like the Russell 2000 ETF. We would typically, if you small cap exposure, favor the S&P 600 index. It's a higher quality index. The Russell 2000 have a lot of companies that don't earn revenue,
Right, right.
biotech companies and so on.
Exactly.
And so little things like that, the infrastructure fund, I agree, there's no need for that. It's heavy on utilities and pipelines.
Right.
You're getting that exposure through S&P. Why have an overweight to utilities?
Yeah.
So there's little things that I think you can improve upon, just even the passive nature of the portfolio of tracking the right benchmark and active. So.
Absolutely agree.
And one more thing, I seem to remember in previous discussions that there's a process for taking our money from PARS and investing it. And I believe wasn't there a year? Then we have to give them a year notice or something? Wasn't there?
I don't think so.
No?
No, I
No.
believe that.
That was
we
in
are
some of the
everything
insurance
It
is-
happens immediately or?
Well, okay, the money's at US Bank. They are the custodian of the funds. So the money's staying at US Bank. It's just that BFSG now will be making the decision.
We're having a
what-
different advisor is all we're doing is changing advisors.
Yeah, everything's
Okay.
staying with US Bank, and actually those accounts just got linked to us 2
Oh.
days ago.
Okay.
And we're getting access through the US Bank
All right.
platform.
The
Nothing's
major,
changing on that.
right.
Okay.
Major change is really the investment advisor, and it's not really about PARS. It's about, we had PFM as our investment advisor, and these guys are essentially replacing PFM.
Okay.
And I like what I hear so far. So
Okay.
trust your judgment.
Thank you.
And I will tell you,
Appreciate that.
since we, 6 months ago, when we had the meeting and the PFM folks were here, they have changed their investments. And so now they're more heavily invested in ETFs and things rather than individual stocks. And the returns are now, 80% of the S&P instead of being 50% of the S&P. So
Public comment?
We took public comment. We did not have any public comment. So we are ready to entertain a motion if there's no more further discussion.
So we're going to move to adopt the investment policy, but postpone the actual allocation of the into the various investments until the next meeting. Is that right?
Yes.
That's what I would move.
Do I have a second? That's Director Jex seconded the motion. Director Danziger,
No.
Director Jex,
Yes.
yes. Director Jorgens.
Yes.
Director Romer.
Aye.
President Hassler.
Yes.
And that concludes our report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 10.3.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah,
Great
thanks.
job.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Q4 financial update.
Fiscal year 2025 is complete. All accounting entries have been made and financial results are final. The original budget was adopted in June 2024 and projected a general fund deficit of $316,000. At the time, labor negotiations were ongoing and the original budget included no salary or benefit increases. In December 2024, the district reached agreements with both labor unions, which included 5% salary increases and benefit enhancements. The district ended the fiscal year with a surplus of $1.5 million. What generated the surplus of $1.5 million? General fund revenue exceeded budget $586,000, primarily due to property tax revenue, which exceeded budget $340,000. The property tax increase came from supplemental property taxes, which are taxes derived when a property sells or has a new construction. The district received $633,000 in total supplemental property tax revenue. Investment earnings exceeded budget $81,000 due to increased interest rates from the board direction to invest in T-bills. Ambulance revenue exceeded budget $159,000 due to a fee increase of 5% and due to a change in the payer mix. Resident write-downs decreased, resulting in increased revenue to the district. Finally, strike team revenue exceeded budget $29,000. On the expenditure side, the district ended the fiscal year with total expenditures less than budget of $2.2 million. Salaries were less than budget $983,000. This was primarily due to conservative projections of the cost of the one-time payment made to Local 1230 and to the Chief Officers Association employees, and also to the timing of the increase. The actual one-time payments didn't occur until February 10th, 2025, which was after the mid-year budget review and so on. So all the adjustments at mid-year were basically projections of what the one-time payments were going to cost and the effect of the 5% salary increases. As well as on the retirement side, the retirement contributions, there was a change with the new MOUs where the safety employees went from paying 9% to 7%. So that resulted in retirement contributions less than budget, $276,000. Overtime was also less than budget, $141,000, and strike team was under budget, $99,000. Finally, operating expenses were less than budget, $302,000. All was helping result in the surplus.
So you said that when they went from paying 9% to 7%, wouldn't that have made our costs go up?
Yes, our costs went up.
But you said that we saved money from that happened.
Well, right. So what happened was when I did the mid-year review, I had to project what the result of that was going to be because it hadn't occurred until February 10th and ongoing. And so with that projection, then there was savings.
Okay.
All transfers for the fiscal year were completed. The district started the fiscal year with $20.4 million in general fund unrestricted fund balance. Next slide. The surplus increased the unrestricted fund balance to $22.1 million, which exceeds the minimum of 40% and exceeded the policy goal of 50%.
Right.
The capital projects fund ended the fiscal year with a surplus of $4.3 million, primarily due to a transfer in from the general fund of $3.9 million. Fund balance in the capital projects fund totals $15.3 million. The debt service fund had a balanced budget. Tunnel East Bay Hills ended the year with a surplus of $379,000, and fund balance of $727,000, which is planned to be transferred to the general fund during the current fiscal year. The Fire Risk Reduction Grant Fund had a surplus of $50,000 and fund balance of $86,000, which is also planned to be transferred to the general fund during the current fiscal year. This is the last slide, and staff has provided 4 updates this year. This concludes the presentation.
Geez, where's the bad news?
So so the fire risk reduction, we had a budget and we're not rolling it into the next year. We're just sending it back to the general fund. I guess that's okay. I guess that's the way it works these days.
I think that's the way it works
In the government. Okay.
Right, so the Fire Risk Reduction Grant, right, when that ends, there'll be a surplus, which is the administrative fee effectively. And so then the plan in the budget is to transfer that surplus to the general fund.
Okay. Okay.
Any
Good
further
job.
questions?
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Good report. Thank you.
All right, we'll open public comment. We do not have any public comment. We move on to item 10.4, the update on hiring, onboarding of single role paramedics.
Good evening, directors. At our last board meeting, there was a request to provide an update with hiring and implementation process of the single role paramedic. The first onboarding class is scheduled to begin September 29th, later this month. All selected candidates have passed structured oral interviews, EMS skills testing, background investigations, and medical examinations. They will now enter a 2-week onboarding program covering administrative orientation, EMS system integrations through our county LIMSA, vehicle and equipment training, district mapping and operations, specialized training such as EVOC, which is emergency vehicle operations, and MCI, which is multi-casualty incident response, including health and wellness. Following the onboarding, each paramedic will complete a field evaluation. It's a 5-call ALS evaluation that's administered through pairing of a proctor and a captain for supervision. They must demonstrate competency by providing ALS interventions. ALS is advanced life support on at least 5 emergency calls. Successful completion of that will then enter a probationary period, which they will receive during an 18-month probationary period. I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Is the 2-week training, is that done all in-house?
The 2-week onboarding?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I have credit to ambulance supervisor Niels Tangerlini, acting battalion chief Jacob Arola, and our single role committee that have compiled, along with our staff of course as well, a 2-week onboarding. Our human resource manager, Christine, has particular topics that are required to cover. And then also things like I mentioned, MCI, equipment orientation, the way that our ambulances work, and then cultural things that we do here at MOFD as well. And that includes living at a fire station. So we believe that this information sets up a success ahead of the 5-call evaluation process.
Sir, if I can add a little bit to that. When Chief Lambert and I looked at our process in the 5-call process with our firefighters, we do see a lot of candidates fail the 5-call process. So we looked at what is kind of causing that and how do we set these candidates and employees up for success. That was to run them through a little 2-week onboarding to give them that extra time to get familiar with our equipment, our policies, our processes, everything they're going to be evaluated on. So we're doing everything we can to set these candidates up for success, because what we don't want to see is 2 or 3 of the paramedics fail their 5-call. Then we won't be able to staff our single role ambulance. We'll be back at the drawing board and interviews and everything.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess the point that they will actually be going out on calls on their own is after they get those 5. I mean, if everything else those 5 ALS calls? Is that the
Yes,
driving
sir. Once
factor?
they,
If they make it through the 2 weeks and
yeah, once all the candidates make it through that 5-call process, then we will put them on the ambulance. They'll start staffing the ambulance. Firefighters will come off and the single role will begin to staff that.
are you able to at all give us any indication of how long that may take? I don't know.
No, sir, not right
No,
now. As we
okay.
start the process, once we get through the 2-week onboarding and we start getting them with their field training officers, the individuals will have an idea and we can, report next meeting, hey, here's where they're at. One candidate's already at 3 calls. One had just hit the cycle wrong where they only got 1 call in a 48-hour shift or something.
During the 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks, is it 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day? What is it? What's the schedule like?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it would be 8 to 5,
Eight to
the
5.
same 40-hour work schedule that staff current works.
Monday through Fridays?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. That's it. That's all I have.
Okay.
All right, we'll open up public comment. And we do not have any public comment. On to item 10.5.
Good evening, directors. At the August board meeting, a director requested a future agenda item to discuss the fire district's role in reviewing large-scale developments in Moraga and Orinda, particularly regarding emergency evacuation considerations such as road capacity, parking, fire hardening standards, and items like that. The fire district and the fire marshal works very closely with the planning department. This wasn't something that always happened. Back in 2012, then State Senator Kehoe drafted land use planning legislation. It was Senate Bill 1241 that passed through the legislature, was signed by the governor, and allowed fire districts or fire departments to have more of a voice in the land use planning and development process. So because of that, we now get a say in the safety elements of cities and counties, depending on, what falls in your jurisdiction, based on fire hazard severity zones. So it really opened up the door to have conversations for the building official, the planning official, the fire official to get together to look at those large scale development and say, what is this going to do to our community? So for the fire district, it's not just building standards that, hey, you have to build to this. We're looking at access requirements, road widths, how many roads. For example, we have, when I was fire marshal, I think it's been about 3 years, we had a proposed development in Indian Valley. In our fire code, based on the number of structures, we have determined that development would require 3 separate access roads into that community. And those are 28-foot roads. So not only are we looking at roads, we're looking at water supply, we're looking at home hardening, we're looking at defensible space. So because of those changes in state law, it has allowed us to engage more with our planning partners in the, city and town to have a more of a say in that process. We currently have a great relationship with both Orinda Planning and Moraga Planning. So when they have developments that they're talking about that are even in the pre-planning stage, they engage the fire district. We go meet with them and we make sure hey, if you have a meeting, we're going to kind of drop what we're doing to go engage and have our voice heard in that process. And it helps the developer. They want to know the requirements going into it instead of starting construction and go, wait a minute, nobody told me I had to have 3 or 4 roads. So it helps everybody through this process.
So do we have, I was going to say blocking rights, but that sounds like something you get in corporate negotiations. Do we have approval rights for these things or just suggestive rights?
Depending on what The topic is, sir, there are certain things like road widths, road access, number of accesses that we do have approval rights. And with those approval rights come denial. If you do not meet this section of the code, your project doesn't move forward. There may be areas that it would just be a suggestion to the planning department that we would like to see, mitigations A, B, and C to overcome a certain item in the development.
So there are some large developments on the, planning drawing boards, at least for downtown Orinda, I know. And there have been people that have expressed questions about, when you add that many new people that have to get out of town if there's a big fire, do we have the evacuation roads necessary to do that? I mean, the roads already exist and it's pretty hard to add new ones. So do we have approval rights on what's happening because we say it's, there isn't enough evacuation capability in areas like that or not?
We could, sir, if depending where they're going in downtown, if there's already existing roads, existing lots, we can't go back and say, hey, upgrade that road to say 28 feet width or 32-foot width because it's not able to handle the capacity of vehicles. But what we would do is say, hey, we understand evacuation is going to be very tough here. Let's build this structure in such a manner that we wouldn't, in a wildfire scenario, need to immediately evacuate it. We build it, pardon the term, but basically bulletproof, fireproof. It's the 7A type construction, sprinklers everywhere. It's vegetation management. It's in a safe area that they could take refuge in that structure and not have to immediately evacuate. Or is it immediately adjacent to a major evacuation route where it's not going to impact that evacuation route? Those are all great questions, sir. Those are all things that we look at when we're sitting down with the planning department.
But do you have the ability to not let them build something for it? Again, we've heard people that said, gee, if you add X thousand people, even if it's just right downtown, right next to the freeway exit, it's still those people, whether they can shelter in place. I mean, having been in a 40-story building that was on fire, you don't wait till you get called to go downstairs. It just doesn't happen. People just say, I'm getting out of town. So everybody's going to want to get on the freeway at the same time, including all the people who are maybe where the fire's burning. And we have pretty limited access to, there are only a handful of roads in the whole, both Orinda and Moraga, they get onto the freeway, which is where everybody wants to go. So, is there the potential for too much development in too dense an area that would cause a problem that we have the ability to say it's too dense, you can't do all that?
I would have to say probably not based on evacuations. We'd have to have something else that falls under our authority to say, no, you can't do this. And unfortunately, evacuation in times or capacity is not within our authority.
Okay, thank you. Was that the end of your presentation?
Yes, sir.
So I have one other related, but not, so we got packages, and this is kind of on the agenda, from Nick Warnoff talking about, which was sort of the purpose of having this in the agenda, talking about the ability for, it turns out, the fire district to do studies that then allows you to, I think you have to ask the city to actually charge the fees for developments so that we can build facilities that will protect those developments. Is that something that we need to put on a future agenda?
Yes, sir. That is going to be on October's agenda. I had a good meeting with Mr. Warnoff to learn everything that he's learned. I'm working with Ruben from Mr. Holtzman's office, as well as the city manager and town manager, to understand the stuff. And yes, right now it appears we would have to do a study to show the need for it. And then at that point, we'd have to talk to our partners in the town and city and see if they were interested in doing that.
Because it looked, you listed a number of cities who have done it, relatively small cities, kind of like us, that have done it. And I assume it's a nice way to help fund their fire department. So we could always use more funding, especially if we're going to add a huge percentage to the population of our cities.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Public, oh,
Great question.
Please. Thank you.
What's the status of the two cities in regards to any evacuation activity? And I mean, is there really a plan?
So there's a current study underway for, I believe, all of Contra Costa County to study the evacuations. I know both Orinda and Moraga are involved in it. I have meetings set with the city and town manager to understand better, and they want our opinion. Both the town manager and city manager have asked us to provide realistic fire scenarios that they could run their modeling and say, okay, how do we evacuate? How long does it take? And understand that. And we've committed to both of them to work with them through this process.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's sounding like the city and town are increasing their involvement of MOFD and their cooperation with, et cetera, because I think in the past that at least our prior chief felt like he was getting stiff-armed a lot. So I'm glad to hear that you're having better luck and well, having better cooperation. That's great.
Yes, sir. We have been fostering those relationships, so open line of communication and, working with city and town staff.
All right, we will open up public comment. And we do not have any public comment. Move on to agenda item 10.6, the acceptance of the Department of Interior Wildfire Management Preparedness Grant for a one slip-on tanker.
Good evening, directors. Several months ago, I was approached by Dennis Rain, our prescribed fire coordinator, and he asked to be able to apply for this grant for a slip-on unit. One thing that we find with our prescribed fire program is the need for water, as we start transitioning into spring and summer. And a lot of times our burning is limited by getting one of our fire engines, coordinating everything. We have staff that's at training. We have staff that's doing a whole bunch of things. So sometimes that becomes very tedious. So accepting this grant will allow us to have a slip-on unit that will go on one of our RD vehicles that will have water and hose and allow Dennis, our prescribed fire coordinator with the fuels mitigation specialist, to be out there and have water and not have a need for a type 3 engine. Really, when we're doing our pile burning, when we do the broadcast type burning, we, both Chief Lambert and I agree having type 3 engines out there or our type 6 engines in a water tender are absolutely necessary for safety. But in those situations where we just need a little water at the end of the day to, knock the heat out of the piles and stuff like this unit would allow us to be able to do that without pulling an engine out of service and taking it out to the project site. There was no match to this. It simple $34,000. We order it. I believe we pay for it, submit the bill, and we get reimbursed through the grant.
That's great. Is this the first time we had a slip-on unit?
We have a slip-on unit for our side-by-side off-road vehicle that Rescue One purchased for us.
Oh.
So we do have one for that. This will allow it on our F-250 flatbed truck.
The type of thing where some firefighters can just pick it up and.
Yeah, it would have to be moved with a forklift, and we have that.
Oh.
So it's easily shouldn't say easy, but we can put it on and off.
Okay.
It will, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
nice.
What are the
Great.
range of vehicles that it can slip onto?
Right now, just our 250 flatbed. It might fit in our utility vehicles, the 2500s. I don't think it would fit in the bed of a 1500.
Good idea.
Yeah.
You were show and tell for us when we get it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any public comment?
So we will open public comment. We do not have any public comment.
So I'll move we approve item 10.6.
This is Romer, second.
Director Danziger?
Aye.
Director Jex?
Aye.
Director Jorgens?
Aye.
Director Romer?
Aye.
President Hassler?
Aye.
Committee reports? Audit Committee?
We have a meeting on Monday, the audit committee.
Joint Fire Prevention City of Orinda?
We have a meeting, I don't know, next month or whatever, but I haven't had one since the last meeting.
And the Town of Moraga?
We had a meeting scheduled and then it got canceled.
And the ad hoc committees for administrative office, 41 facilities and 45 facilities.
We met on Zoom. We have another one scheduled for next week. Things are coming along a little bit. I think maybe next month we'll have a report ready for the board. But
I don't think there's anything to talk about publicly yet. Yeah, because
what?
there's some of the things we can't talk about yet.
Yeah. There's some things we can't, but we have met and we're meeting again next week and things are progressing somewhat.
Yep.
Okay, we will open public comment for the committee reports. We do not have any public comment. Requests for future agenda items?
I had one, and it can either be a separate agenda item or you can do it as part of Chief's report, but I would like to hear an update on the Board of Forestry discussions they're having on Zone Zero. I mean, I've been reading things and, researching myself, but I didn't hear it tonight at all.
Correct, sir. They're meeting tomorrow.
Oh.
In Los Angeles and talking to staff in Sacramento. They
Okay.
plan or assume there's going to be some changes. So we will definitely have a update next month after their LA meeting.
I would also ask maybe, we got a month from now, if there's a significant movement, maybe you can just let us know. So, because I personally, I get those questions all the time from people in places I go, be it ambassador, assessments or just other places in the community. People keep asking me and I can read it like everybody else, but if you can let us know if there's something.
Yes, sir. I'll give a
That'd be great.
update after tomorrow's meeting.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
There was an invitation to the Orinda water treatment plan for this Friday that I accepted. I wonder if anybody else got or accepted.
I did.
You did, so you
Yeah.
will be there? I know I've mentioned in the past that at some point I'd love to have some sort of a presentation on our whole water system. And maybe we'll learn a little bit on Friday too. There's no urgency to that though, so I would. What?
Waste. It's a wastewater.
That's wastewater. Oh, okay.
I don't think you brought that up. Are we going there as directors or is that why we got invited? I'm not even sure.
Frankly.
Did everyone get invited? Oh,
Yeah, why did we get invited and nobody else did?
I don't know. So I don't know that we're going there as directors. I'm not sure why I got invited. I was invited once before and they canceled it. So
Right.
maybe that's why. I don't know.
Director Romer, I have on my list of agenda items in the future before the end of the calendar year to have East Bay Mud come in and give us a presentation. So that hasn't fallen off my radar, just working to try to coordinate with them.
Yeah. No urgency at all. It's just something I think is important. I'm interested.
Okay, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Yeah, there's an enthusiasm.
And the time is 9:42.
Oh.
And we have,
All those in
we have one
favor?
announcement though.
Sorry.
Before we adjourn.
That's right. Before we do that, I was going to ask that we adjourn this meeting in memory of retired Alameda City Fire Chief Doug Clifton, who unfortunately passed away in a motorcycle accident with his partner, Kathy Velez Katz.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for reminding me.
Okay.
I know.
Thank you, everyone.
You can just leave it right there. Thank you.